It is Monday night on Breaking the News Plus, and we got to talk about some politics because the state lawmakers are lawmaking right now. They're getting the deal done, and to talk about this with me tonight and other things happening in St. Paul is my friend Amy Koch. Amy Koch, former Republican lawmaker in Minnesota. She knows what happens in those rooms where they have to get along with each other and pass a budget or pass a bonding bill, which God knows they're not going to do. But let's get to the budget a little bit later, because the two questions that the people who aren't watching the balls and strikes of will this budget get done are: what happens to Senator Nicole Mitchell, who's charged with felony burglary, and will Governor Walz try to run again? Let's start with Senator Mitchell. This afternoon, hearing. Go ahead. What do you think of the situation? The trial starts for Senator Mitchell a week from today.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. So a story that's a year in the making, right? She was booked or charged with felony burglary over a year ago in the middle of session. She drove down 94 to Detroit Lakes. She's allegedly broke into her stepmother's home and was discovered in the basement wearing all black with a flashlight with a sock on it. The story was quite something. I would have never thought that over a year later, we would still be talking about her as a senator, but she refused to step down. Her caucus, there were multiple votes to expel her. The DFL caucus did not, which I think was a massive mistake, except that she was the 34th vote. And so finally it's going to trial, cutting it really close to special session, which I also think nobody thought was going to happen. But this story is going to come out in the trial. And I do not see how Senator Mitchell could possibly hold on to her seat. If she does, it will put that seat. It's a fairly strong DFL seat now in Woodbury, where she represents. But I have to think the people of Woodbury would not return her to the Senate, and could be a pickup opportunity for Republicans should she remain into the election next year.
That's an interesting point, Amy. Yeah, Senator Mitchell, a Democrat, and the balance of power never been tighter. It's tied in the House, a one-vote difference in the Senate, where she sits. So even if she ran again and let's say we're exonerated, I'm not so sure what the voters would say.
Yeah, no, the story's pretty damning. There's the 911 call from her poor stepmother who was scared to death. She wasn't sure who was in her house. It's a pretty tough story. There's a lot to be made. If you were running an election, there's a lot of hay to be made around that story and what happened, even if she were found, in some way, or not, not held, not sent to jail, or, depending on, not found fully guilty.
Right. So we've had, my goodness, 8 years of politicians in both state houses and in Congress talking about misbehaviors or alleged misbehaviors and should they step down. And it's tight in Congress. It's tight in the state legislature. You mentioned you thought Senator Mitchell should step down, step aside, and that her party should say so. She didn't. Would you have said the same thing if Senator Mitchell were a Republican?
You have to, 100%. And you saw it with Republicans, actually. Senator Justin Eichhorn this year was charged with sex trafficking, underage sex trafficking. It was the Senate Republicans that stepped up and said, he's got to go. I think that people make mistakes, and I take it case by case. But when you've got felony burglary charges, and the story of what happened, and also sort of this idea that her mother is she has started dementia, and that to think that Detroit Lakes police are going to arrive and find a woman in confusion and still drag off a state senator for felony burglary charges, it just defies belief. It's ultimate gaslighting, and it calls into deeply her state of mind and her ability to make really sound decisions or represent the people of Woodbury. She should have stepped down. Governor Walz called on her to step down. Chair of her party, Ken Martin, called on her to step down. It's not just Republicans. It's been Democrats too. And I agree with all of them.
Right, good point. And Senator Mitchell's defense that we've heard from lawyers, very, very limited, but we've heard that she said she was going to retrieve her late father's ashes, that her stepmother wouldn't give her, yada, yada, yada. So let's just leave that to the jury to decide, because that's most decidedly, that jury gets selected a week from today. We'll see what happens with that Senate seat that is extremely important, and we'll get to that balance of power and why. But you just mentioned the name Governor Tim Walz. He has always said this summer he would tell us what he was going to do politically, whether it's leave the governor's mansion and not run again, run for a national office, or stay and try to run for a third term. You talk to people. What do you think he will do? What do you think he should do?
Well, those are two great questions. So I think he will run again. He's got $1 million in the bank, maybe more by now, right? We haven't seen, but he's got in his campaign fund, he's got a lot of money. He certainly has been, he's been out in the state of Minnesota, but even more pronounced on a national level. We even saw, which I think was a mistake, a week and a half ago. He was in a variety of states on a weekend where, layoff notices were going out for state employees in case of a shutdown. I didn't think that was a good idea, but still, he's definitely upping his profile. And so everything tells me that he will run for governor again. Whether or not he has national ambition or if he's just, finding a way as a governor to have a voice in a really big way and sort of drive the conversation. I can't make a decision on that. I don't know his mind and I wouldn't want to comment on that. Should he run again? So that's an interesting question. We've never seen it in the state of Minnesota. This would be his third term. And constitutionally, there's no bar to him running for a third term. As a tradition, we've never had a Minnesota governor serve more than 2 terms. And I think that the people of Minnesota may just, have some concerns with that. Mm-hmm. And so, if I were him, I think I would step aside and I would, he's certainly got a national profile. I would work on that. I would find, other projects, maybe run on a national level. I'm not sure that it's going to be, successful, but also Republicans haven't mounted a really strong statewide candidate in a very long time. We've not won statewide since 2006. So if you're Governor Walz eyeing that seat, the odds are that you've got a good shot at winning a third term. And so you're calculating all of this as you make that decision. But I think he runs again.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we'll keep that tape then. And something to be noted, all of the people watching this know, but it bears saying anyway, even if he runs and let's say he wins, I mean, people leave their jobs all the time if a national office seems to open up that they feel so compelled to go to. So, that makes sense, your assessment of keeping his name in a bigger picture, but also, run for the job you think you can win.
Republican Governor Jim Pawlenty stated several times, I'm running for governor. I'm not going to run for something else. And then he switched and ran for president. Michelle Bachmann, former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. I can name Republicans. I can name Democrats. It happens all the time in politics.
And it's an interesting time, too, because that seat, if I'm correct, opens up does it open in 2026 or 2028?
2026.
Right. So that's a midterm
2026
election.
is a big year. Oh, yes. Midterm, the entire state house is up, the entire state senate is up, all the congressional races, all the statewide races, and of course, the open seat for Senator Tina Smith. So we'll have a U.S. Senate race on the ballot as well. Big year.
Yeah, I think everybody. Are you running for that? Everybody else is.
No, not at all. Never.
All right. So you talked about all the open seats coming up, and that's, I think, an important segue into our legislature is working today. They're going to work possibly a 21-hour day to get the budget done because that's what we employ them to do in a budget year. And I think the timing of today is important because had they not gone to a session today was the day that 28,000 Minnesotans were going to get pink slips in case of a government shutdown. And neither party wants to be the one held responsible by the voter in 2026 for putting the state in a shutdown. Is that fair to say?
Right. Well, the last shutdown was 2011, and I was the majority leader at the time. And let me tell you, you do not want to get to that point. We shut down for 21 days, the longest shutdown in state history, and it is painful. It is difficult, and it's just there's no ideal situation. And so finding this compromise, particularly when they're so carefully divided. You're not going to be able to accomplish all your sort of more partisan issues. You just have to figure out what are the things that we can get done constitutionally. We need to balance this budget. Fortunately, there's actually some bit of money in this biennium. It's the out years that need to be solved, and just taking like the smallest, tightest view of what's required to get done, and doing that in a very public and transparent way is where I would go. We all know there was a breakdown at the beginning, right? The DFL didn't show up for a month. Republicans then were in charge of the House for a month. We've had the felony burglary arise in the Senate. We've had the Senator Eichhorn stepping down in the Senate. It has been a really unbelievable one for the history books session. And so to see, it's no surprise they went into overtime, but I'm very, very glad to see that they have come to some compromise and are getting those votes done today before we go into anywhere close to a government shutdown.
Right, because like you mentioned, you've been in the driver's seat, and as just a voting Minnesotan, I am not particularly sure that everybody's interested in watching people dig their heels in. There are important issues that both sides have, but you're seeing a lot of teeth gritting, like, we just have to pass this budget. Nobody is ready to watch more political theater right now. We're having to balance our budgets at homes and in our homes in ways we haven't. You get to doing yours.
Right. And never mind what's going to happen on a federal level, right? Which is
Right.
going to play into that state budget a big way. So we need the state to have decided on a budget. Fortunately, there's a fairly large surplus because depending on what happens on a federal level, if you take the big, beautiful bill that's passed, there are going to be definite cuts and holes, even in the budget that they're passing today. The cuts that happen on the federal level are going to trickle down to a state level, trickle down to the counties, trickle down to cities, and just regular Minnesotans, everyday Minnesotans. And so having some stability and having that resolution on a state level is really key as we watch out what plays on a federal level.
Yeah, you don't want to have, that's a great point, that uncertainty on top of you don't know what's happening from top to bottom. So once you have a document that's certain for the state, you know what you have to work with.
Correct. We were in shutdown in 11 at the same time that there was shutdown looming on a federal level. And it was just, it was a bad time on bad time. Again, in a very closely divided time, and, with a massive budget deficit looming. So, I don't envy these leaders. I'm glad to see they worked something out, but it had to happen.
Well, we appreciate your insights and know that you have been there before. Always entertaining to talk to you, Amy Koch. We appreciate it. I know it's a busy day for you as well, because even though you're not leading the party, you're still very much plugged in at our state capitol.
Very much, yes. So thanks for having me, Jenna, though. I love talking about it. It's fun to break it down.
Anytime. We can sense the urgency always when you're in your car. I appreciate it, Amy.
That's right.
See you later.
Have a great evening.
That's all for Breaking the News Plus on this Monday night. We will see you back here, same time, same plus.